All right, thanks guys for tuning in again to Lethal Arm Assassin Network. Anybody who's helped support us along the way, I just want to give you a big thank you. If you're a first-time viewer, make sure you hit subscribe for more content like this. Today we got an interesting guest, Mr. Shawn Hancock. I'll let him go through an introduction of himself, but I'll let you know up front some of the things that we're going to talk about in this episode is going to be URPA, IFA, and PAL top 8 affiliations, and what might be on the cusp, and what the future of arm wrestling could be with those platforms being added. So Shawn, could you give us a quick introduction as to who you are, how you got started arm wrestling, and then finally where you're at right now with PAL and URPA and IFA?
Sure, I appreciate y'all letting me be on the show with you to promote this. I got started in the sport at an early age. My dad had a lot of workers, construction workers around me a lot, and so they taught me a little bit about the sport when I was in my early teens, and it wasn't very long before I started beating most of them, so it got me really, really enthused about it. We got involved a lot in high school. We would do a lot of, after school matches, and then of course after high school at the local watering holes, we'd put money and we'd go outside. They wouldn't let us do it inside the bar, so we'd go out and do it on the trunk of a car for $20 for the next round of drinks or something like that. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. Got started in some tournaments back in 2005, just some local tournaments because we didn't, it's pre-social media. Didn't hear about it a lot that was anywhere outside of your immediate area. So just a lot of little local tournaments. And then I went to my first nationals in 2007. Wound up tearing a tendon in my elbow, and that put me out of the sport for a few years. During that time, I learned that I could arm wrestle left-handed. So now I'm a pretty good left-hand arm wrestler. Back in 2015, I was reintroduced to the tournament world through BJ Fokakis when he got started in it. He's a good friend of mine. I grew up with him, lived close to him, and he pushed me along, kept pushing me until I started doing some tournaments with him, and I appreciate that very much. But I knew that once I got involved with it, I knew that I already had so much passion and love for the sport that I wanted to do more than just compete. So I went ahead and dove right off into the promoting world and refereeing as well. As soon as I started promoting, actually, I started Mississippi Arm Fighter Incorporated.
Right.
And went ahead and got sanctioned with that through USAA. And so that introduced me to Denise and Leonard. I've had Leonard over at the house before. He's done some clinics here in town, helped us ref in some of our local events. But they've pushed me along. They saw that I had a lot of passion for the sport and saw that I could, fill a void in several places. So they have really pushed me to do more with it. They've introduced me to a lot of the people with PAL. With IFA, they invited me to the Congress meeting in Poland this past year. So I met a lot of people there, made a lot of really good contacts. So
you traveled for the Congress meeting in Poland. You were there for that.
Yes, I was there at the Congress meeting in Poland. Also,
that was the inception of the IFA, or was that after it was already kind of put together?
IFA was formed last spring in April of 2019 by the countries of Ukraine, Poland, and Switzerland. They came together after the fallout with WAF, and they started the IFA. USAA joined a few months after, and that's when I got on board with them, because when we found out we were going to go to the World Championships in Poland in December, Denise asked me if I would go to the Congress meeting with them because they wanted me to meet everyone. And so I really dove in head deep at that point, getting into the politics and whatnot. But like I said, they introduced me to a lot of the key members of PAL and ARPA and IFA. So I made a lot of good friends there while I was there. So when I got back, it's kind of snowballed really fast. I started getting a lot of offers. Before, I was just the owner of Mississippi Arm Fighter. and promoter with USAA. But now I'm a promoter and referee for IFA. Well, I was also a referee for USAA. I'm the United States representative for ARPA. I'm the United States representative for PAL, and I'm also the United States distributor and salesperson for Mazarenko Equipment. All of that has happened in the past month and a half, really. So this is where we're going now, is with the ARPA inception, getting it started, and that's the whole reason for. I guess this is my main agenda for the podcast is to promote ARPA.
So taking a step back, for some of the viewers who might not be really familiar with IFA or ARPA, I'm sure some of them understand that IFA is an organization, but what is ARPA and what is its relationship with IFA or, other organizations?
ARPA was created for any organization to use. We'll get into exactly what ARPA is in a few minutes, but ARPA was created for any organization, any association to use, and IFA is just one of those organizations that chooses to use the ARPA. It was created even for WAL. That's what's so ironic about the split. It was created for them to use, and they bucked the system, and that's what created the fallout, is whenever ARPA was introduced to them. I guess I'll go ahead and explain what happened there. There was it's basically a misunderstanding about how the referees were going to act. They took it as a threat against their association, and so they had their general secretary issue a letter that stated any referee that refed for the ARPA would be banned from any WAL organizations events. They didn't even know that it involved competitors at that time. They just said they issued the ban for referees later on, and that kind of stung. That created a lot of bees in the air right there, if you will, but not between the pores, and you may not even heard about that. This is back in December of 2018 when this happened. Most people didn't know about the split or any problems until the spring of 2019, and that's when WAL realized that ARPA it directly involves the competitors, so they double down on their ban. They said, hey, not only do we ban referees, we'll ban any athlete that pulls for ARPA. And that's when everything fell apart. That's when a lot of nations started pulling out and saying, hey, you're not going to ban us. That's what the nations that have the power on their own to do that, or the associations that have that power. A lot of these countries don't have the power to just pull away from WAL because it's government ran.
So how could ARPA be perceived as a threat to WAF? I'm not understanding.
And I have talked to some of the Europeans that are with PAL and ARPA, and they really didn't understand it either, because it was such a silly misunderstanding. It literally happened overnight when they presented the ARPA to the WAL. They just took it as a threat that they were going to start sanctioning their referees and have their thumb on top of their referees. They said, no, we bucked this. We're not having anything to do with this. You're not doing anything with our referees. And then that's the next morning. That's when they had their general secretary draw that letter up saying, hey, anybody that refs for the ARPA will be banned from the from pulling any or reffing any WAF events.
Now, did WAF have their referees in like some type of contract that they weren't able to go and ref anywhere else previously, or was there any type of contract that gave them certain rules before this?
They may have some of their referees under contract, but I know there are others that are not. I'm not saying they have any that are under contract, but I do know that others, like Leonard Harkless, was not under contract. They ref, for all kind of organizations.
So that would be weird to me to have a referee under contract. That would just wouldn't make sense right now, the way the sport is.
Well, it is certainly makes me believe that no one had a contract, because you did have a good many of these. Before this happened, you had a mass amount of referees that would rail for WAF Worlds that would also rail for Zloty Tour. So
yeah,
companies. But it shouldn't have even been a conflict, or WAF is not supposed to view theirself as a competing company at all that's out there making money. They were looking at PAL and took PAL and URPA as a threat, but PAL and URPA is a private-owned organization for profit. WAF and IFA are organizations not for profit. They're organizations to represent the countries and the world as a whole, governed by a committee. But anyway, that's how it happened. As silly and as crazy as it sounds, it was a misunderstanding over the refs for ARPA, and the very next day they issued that letter issuing those bans.
So the idea of the reffing and crossing over into, and it's not even another association really, because the way I understand it, the rules are the same. But so that caused the split, which pushed us in the direction of IFA. So ARPA came before IFA. So for a new arm wrestler right now who's just getting into the sport and just understands the basics and the different leagues and everything, what is ARPA and how does it affect those other leagues in this country?
All right. Again, ARPA is a company designed for any organization worldwide. Any organization in America, Turkey, China, any arm wrestling organization can choose or choose not to use the ARPA. It's twofold. ARPA is a guideline system to create standards for the sport, and it's a point system to create rankings for the athletes. That's the reason I support ARPA, is because I don't know anything else that does what ARPA does.
Now, how does that point system work? Like, does that point system, say if like me and Paul were holding ARPA tournament, is that point system gonna register our tournament, or how does it actually, like, give us the details of this point system?
If you're an ARPA certified promoter, that's the first thing. If you're an ARPA certified promoter, you choose to use the ARPA point system for whatever events you want to. First off, you're not an ARPA brand. You still keep your brand, but you're adding. That's just an added benefit to your brand, and you don't have to use it for every tournament that you host. You can pick and choose what tournaments you want for ARPA. ARPA points are the point system works two different ways. First, when you register your tournament for ARPA, your tournament will have a multiplier attached to it. If it's a medium-sized tournament with some T-shirts with not any live streaming, it might have a multiplier of 3 attached to it. If it's a very large tournament like the qualifiers, the world's qualifiers, it'll have a multiplier of 5 attached to it. If it's something on the level of the Zloty Tour, which is an elite level tournament, it'll have a multiplier of 10 attached to it. What the multiplier is, it'll take your points and multiply them by that multiplier. First place will get 10 points. Whoever pulls in the tournament, every first place contestant will get 10 points. If it's a multiplier of 3, they'll leave that tournament with 30 points. It's automatically added into the database because the bracket and software system is done online and it's in real time. So when the tournament, the bracket, everything on the bracket, as it breaks down, it's all online, right? In the system, so there's no way to get the points or anything screwed up or not entered. They're already there.
Okay, so a question I got about the multipliers too. So let's say so the multipliers decided before the tournament happens. What happens if it's a good promoter, a good promotion? It's usually good, but somehow there's a date conflict and the tournament flops. Let's say the classes are normally the 15 competitor classes with high quality opponents, and now it flops and we have 6 competitor classes. Does that multiplier stand? Yes.
The multiplier will start at the beginning, and that it is set then. The actual multiplier would actually be entered well before the tournament starts.
So it's based off of the perception that, hey, this promotion has done well before, this promoter can get people out there. So, and my big questions are, when I start thinking about this, like, hey, how does it affect us? Because, we host tournaments, a few a year that do pretty good. So first off, what does it cost me? And second off, what do I have to do? Because I don't want to have to do a whole lot of extra stuff.
Yeah. But back to the real quick, the multiplier, that there are some questions that would be asked about your tournament before the multiplier is determined. It's not just a perception of how good it's going to be or how many people you're going to have. There'll be questions like, are you going to sell t-shirts? Is it going to be live stream? Is it going to have a DJ? What was your participation last year? Things of that nature. That'll determine your multiplier. What was the other question?
So yeah, then I'm just saying, if I'm looking at it from the perspective that, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, and I host 4 tournaments a year, and I might be giving up my biggest one to get that good multiplier. So what is that going to cost me financially, and what do I have to do? Because I wanted to make it as easy as possible, because tournaments, they're a nightmare.
Yeah. ARPA doesn't get involved. If you've already promoted the tournament, it's still the same thing. The only extra is go onto the website and enter yourself, or fill out a short application to become a certified promoter with ARPA. Once they accept it, you would simply there's a $100 original what's the word I'm looking for? Administration. There's a $100 administration fee for each tournament that you host under ARPA, and that simply pays for the website, the software, and the bracketing system that you're using. Someone's got to keep that open. That's what the $100 administration fees goes towards.
Right. So, and that brings me back to, what do I have to do? Because entering data on the back end is a nightmare. So if I run a bunch of paper brackets and everything else, how do I have to hand my paper? Do I have to mail them in? What do I need to do? Scan them? Like, how does that information for the winners and stuff, how does that get logged for ARPA? Because I know I don't want to have to do that.
All right. So again, before the tournament even starts, you enter your tournament into the database, into the website. Once you start getting people signing up, they can still sign up on paper, however you want them to sign up. Your same old system. But as you enter people into the bracket, you'll take the form and you'll see their name. And you type 4 letters, you say you're on the website, you type 4 letters of their name, their picture pops up. You click on their picture, you go down there, you click on the weight class they're pulling, it throws them into the bracket. You go to the next person, type 4 letters of their name in, click on their picture, click on the weight class they're pulling, and that's it. You don't have to physically scroll through, because I know that's the way we have to do a lot right now. And Brad, man, gets so pissed off with it because we're shifting through files. We're like, where's this guy pulling? We have to put each person in the file and make sure we pull them out and put them into the bracket. But the database does that automatically.
So they're online. It's online automated brackets then.
Yes, it's online automated. The system generates the bracket. I like to talk about the bracket system for a minute, because this is the best thing to me for a promoter, is the way the brackets are ran. It takes every bit of the microphone chatter out. There's no more that person sitting on the microphone, screaming in the microphone, looking for this person or that person. The person's outside, they can't find them, they're steadily hollering their name. By the time you get 6 hours into the tournament, you got a pounding headache because you're hearing that person pounding and screaming in the microphone the whole time. No more of that. There's no more. You can literally have a DJ run music during the entire tournament, because you have a screen on the stage. Anybody can go to Walmart, buy a $100 screen and put it up on the stage. They hook it to their computer where the brackets pop up. It's got the 2 competitors that are pulling at a table right now. It shows them what side of the table they pull on. This guy goes to this side of the table. This guy goes to this side of the table. Reason that's done always is because if they meet each other again, and the bracket is automatically going to swap sides of the table for them. Well, not only are the top 2 people that are pulling on the screen, the people under them, the ones that are on deck, and then the ones under them, and the ones under them, and the ones under them. So what this does is gives the competitor an opportunity to warm up when he needs to warm up. He don't have to warm up at the beginning of the tournament and be cold by the time he pulls. When he sees his name pop up down there about fourth in place, he knows he has, 10 or 15 minutes. He can go warm up. He can get ready. He can get prepped, get mentally focused, and watch his pitcher roll to the top. And then when his pitcher rolls to the top, there's no discussion there. He knows exactly where he's going. He knows what side of the table he's going to, and he competes. It's just a very easy, foolproof system for both the promoter and the competitor.
Now, question for you. Say Paul's holding, a tournament under the ARPA guidelines. Me and you are going there to compete. You're registered under ARPA. So when Paul goes to enter you in the bracket, he just starts typing Shawn, you come up, he puts you in there. I don't want to go compete at the tournament, but I don't want to register to ARPA. Will he still just be able to manually input my name in that software? And I guess I just wouldn't get collected points in the system, but you would?
That's exactly correct. That's exactly correct. Anyone that's already in the system, that's already a member of ARPA, y'all remember to ask me that in a minute too, how you become a member. But anyone that's already in the system, type the promoter only has to type 4 letters of their name and their picture, and information comes up, and they click on that. If you're not already in the system, then they would physically type in the whole name just to enter them into it. And then when their placement came up to pull, it would show their name, and it would just show a blank spot there for where the pitcher's supposed to be. So yes, you do not have to be a member of ARPA to pull in a ARPA tournament. But if you're not a member, you won't get any points. If you are a member, you will get points. But you do not have to be a member to pull in an ARPA tournament. So you're not alienating anyone. Somebody that don't want to be associated with ARPA because they're don't want to mess up what they have with WAF or whatever, then the promoters, they're not having to alienate anyone. That's another question that I have people ask. That's what they're scared of. Promoters are scared that if they register with ARPA or they host ARPA events, that pullers won't come. Some certain pullers won't come because they don't want to be banned with WAF. They don't have to pull under ARPA. They don't sign up with ARPA. They won't get any points. It's not an association with ARPA. It's just the pullers that are already signed up with ARPA.
Now, another question. Say we go to this tournament and the person who is not registered under ARPA takes first place, but the puller that takes second place is registered under ARPA. Does that second place person only get second place points then?
Correct.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So, and I know you talked about earlier about point shifts. Is that the only way for so it's a running total, right? So you're saying you go if you just got 10 from hitting a high profile tournament, and now you go to a smaller tournament and somehow you don't place, you have a terrible day. Do you lose points from that? I mean, is there any type of algorithm?
No, you don't lose any points, and the points last for 3 years, by the way. So your points will add up for 3 years, and then what will happen is
like a rolling total where they'll age out as they go.
Yeah, they will not start over every year. Some people are thinking that they won't start over every year. So that's a good reason to go ahead and get registered now and start pulling ARPA events now. Because by the time this thing catches on, if you wait till next year, well, you're going to be starting a year behind. So whoever starts now, their points are going to start accumulating, and they're liable to have 50, 60, or 80 points by the time you register and start pulling.
Right. So the flip side to that too is then what if somebody decides to get a late start? How do they make up? Do they have to because that's what I'm hearing right now sounds like I could tournament hop if I have the funds and the travel time, I could tournament hop and take, seconds and thirds everywhere and never a first, but still somehow find myself as the highest ranked opponent. How can the better arm wrestlers who may get a late start, how can they make up ground?
Vendetta matches. There are 2 ways to earn points, and that's either by going to tournaments and your placements determine how many points you take home. But overall, say you have a top level puller that comes in, he don't come in until August of 2021, and he's way behind on points. Well, he pulls the first tournament and he wins first place of a multiplier of 3. He gets 30 points. All he has to do is be on the board. Very first tournament, he's got 30 points. Well, now he has an opportunity to call a vendetta match against anyone that he believes he can beat. It's got to be a legitimate match, though, and that's where it comes down to the representative for that country. They would set the representative for that country would set the vendetta match up, and they're not going to just set up a bogus match. They're not going to let number 10 call out number 1 if there's not a chance in hell that he was going to even come close to number 1. It's going to be a legitimate match. That's the same thing that PAL is doing now with their vendetta matches. Any vendetta match that's ever been set up, it's always been a close match. You know, you have some every now and then that's not real close, but for the most part, it's a really good setup matchup.
So the points are on the line. Then is it exchange of points, and then if there is any points exchanged, do both competitors have to agree to the match?
Again, that's where the representative, the country's representative comes in play. He sets that match up. Is a very good question though. Is what if the higher placed competitor just completely declined? That's a good question that I don't know the answer to. And I will find out the answer, because there should be a timeline that he pull or void his spot. So that's an answer that I do not know yet. We hadn't had that situation come up. So, but say the 5th place person has 100 points. The 1st place person has 200 points. If the 5th place person calls out number 1 and he beats number 1, he will absorb his points. He will absorb his points plus 2. So he takes 200. He's got 202 points. The 1st place person keeps his points, so he goes 1 place back. So the 1st place person goes to place 2. The 5th place person goes to the 1st place spot with 202 points. So he doesn't steal any points away from the person that he beats. He absorbs his points plus 2. So anytime there's a vendetta match, there won't be a big gap between them. There won't be, once he beats him, there won't be, well, then this 400 and 200 points. There'll only be 2 points in between them. So it keeps them real close together to keep them competing against each other.
So
fighting for points.
If the higher ranked, the number 1 ranked dude, he beats the number 5 ranked dude, he gets 102 points to add to his total?
No, he gets 2 points to add to his. He gets 2 points for his win, but the other guy doesn't get any points.
Okay.
Now, just let's say, the number 5 guy beats the number 1 guy. The number 1 guy that's now the number 2 guy can go to a tournament 2 weekends from now, score 10 points, and be back to technically number 1?
Yes.
That sounds fair to me, because once again, he's standing nothing to gain in the actual match, because he's only getting 2 points. He's risking losing his spot to a number 5 guy. So it does make sense, because it makes up for that inequity there. If you call a vendetta out, like if, Storm's ranked number 1, I'm ranked number 5, like, hey, Storm, pull me. And Storm's saying, what am I getting out of this? 2 points and you get 200. So I'd like to think if that were to happen, there would be something that would favor that number 1 guy to be able to get back to his spot, especially if it was a fluke match.
Right. Yeah, he can go and pull another tournament. That keeps them to where they get close. Then there's not big gaps. That's closing these big gaps, because you will have the big gaps between 5 and 1, and wherever people are. And just like any brackets or ranking system, there's going to be gaps and mixed ranks for a while until it all gets shook out. But when these vendetta matches start taking place, well, then you got, instead of having 100, 200 point gaps, you have a whole lot of them that are real close within 2, 4, 6, or 8 points down here, and they can continually pass each other up leapfrog over each other as they go to more tournaments, get 10 points here. This person got 20 points. This person gets 8 points. And the bracket system, the computer software automatically changes all these rankings as they get points.
Right. So WAL did a point system in the past, and it got abandoned pretty quickly because I guess the Australian system is more of an algorithm of like point values, and it needed more data. It never got enough data. It kind of floundered early on because of it. I think it was a sound system, and if we had 3 years of data, I think it would have really painted a good picture, not just at the highest level, because the highest level the picture was painted because those guys had data. But it's the newer people, the mid-level guys, there wasn't enough data for accuracy. So when I'm looking at this, it does seem like there is a little bit early on with that inequity, but it does also sound like that it's going to take a couple years for it really to balance out and make a whole lot of sense. But I'm also thinking too, like, so if we talk about this points accumulation, if you get a guy who's number one for a long time, and he's taking vendetta matches and he's giving people their shots, and he's also going to a lot of tournaments and taking a ton of first places, is there ever going to be a scenario where there's a cap on those points? Because I think we could see somebody like Levon, who, if he decided to be super active for a year at every URPA tournament, he might wind up with an insurmountable advantage.
Well, that's where in 3 years from now, his first year falls off.
Right. Okay. Makes sense.
Yeah. So that kind of solves that problem. And the ARPA classification, there are 2 classifications. There's a general and an elite classification whenever you're entered into the database. The only elite tournament right now is the Zloty Tour. That's the only elite classification tournament for the for ARPA or PAL as we speak. What we're trying to do, we're looking at having Zloty style tournaments in the United States and every other country. So there will be elite classification tournaments everywhere. The only way you'll ever be on in the elite classification is if you pull one of the elite tournaments like the Zloty Tour. So everyone that signs up now is going to be in the general classification. Everyone in America will be in the general classification, except for the people who went to Zloty Tour this past year and they signed up there. Then they're in the elite classification. What that doesn't really mean a whole lot, except for like I said, when you go to the elite tournaments, you can earn points for those elite tournaments. So it doesn't mean a whole lot right now, but as we start having those elite level tournaments in America, then you'll start being that's when it'll start being able to make a change for you.
So what about the scenario where we always have, we always have the questions here in this country for sure about, because sometimes we have novice, amateur, and pro. So what happens if somebody goes to Zloty Tour, doesn't place well, and wants to come back and say, I don't want, just because I competed in Zloty doesn't mean I want to be in the elite classification. Can somebody like that go back to general?
Yeah, well, they will be when they pull in the general tournament, they'll be in that general classification. The only way they get elite points is when they go to an elite tournament. So it's basically you can be in both classifications.
Yeah, you got 2 different scores.
Right. Score, and that's the way with every country. That's the same way it'll be for every country. So the points not only rank you for the world rankings, they rank you for each country as well. So when you go on the website and you pull your name up, you click on your name and it'll show you your picture and it'll show you your rank. It'll show you where you're ranked at inside the United States, and it'll show where you're ranked at within the world. So like I said, once the elite level tournaments start in other countries, that's when you'll be able to pick up elite points. As you can go around to these. If you have plenty of money, go to every country if you want to. But if it's, we have 1 or 2 in the United States per year, that's where you'll pick up your elite points to be able to be ranked in that classification as well. And that's being ranked against all the other people that are pulling elite tournaments like the Zloty Tour.
Now, what's the benefit of having elite points versus just your general points?
It's just another ranking. It's basically saying this is where I'm ranked in the elite category. If you Worlds and Zloty Tour. The World Championships and Zloty Tour. There's a difference. Everybody knows there's a great big difference there in the levels. So it's fair to have a ranking for everyone who's a professional, but it's also fair to have a ranking for those elite professionals. And that's what that elite classification is going to be. Some of the people aren't going to have a general classification at all because they want to pull in they want to have the ranking in only the elite. But I guess if you have 2,000 people in the elite classification, if they were all grouped in with everyone, it would kind of suck for the people that are below their level, because they would never have a chance to get ranked up because they're in the same ranking with all the elites. Right. Well, now the elites have their own ranking. And then you have the ranking for everyone that's not in the elite at the elite level.
Something to do with that, which I'm sure many people are going to actually have questions about, going with, the elites and things like that. So IFA Worlds, that's going to be an actual drug-tested professional tournament, correct? Mm-hmm. And like the Zloty Tour, PAL events, they're non-drug tested.
Correct.
Okay.
If a Worlds is for bragging rights and trophies and saying you're the world champion, no money. If PAL, Zloty Tour, ARPA, PAL, it's a 100% professional organization. It's for money, and it's no drug testing whatsoever.
So if I'm tracking, URPA is kind of like, I don't want to say a farm system, but like a developmental system to get to that PAL Zloty level. So obviously Zloty Tour is always going to take place in Poland. And we talked about the United States having their own elite tournaments. Would those elite tournaments be hosted by PAL, or would that be a scenario where we say, hey, our promotions are getting so good, we want to host an elite one on our own?
They would be the ARPA representative for that country would host that tournament. And they would do that in conjunction with the help of PAL, because PAL they're agreeing to teach us and to let us use their systems and to come over and help us run that type of tournament. We don't have them as of right now, so we need the help. We need the guidelines. We need the people to come over and help us. We need them to literally show us how they're doing what they do. If we already knew how to do it, we would already be doing it, but we're not. So it would be with the help of PAL, because ARPA is owned by the PAL.
Right. So the United States, being the fairly egocentric country that we are, what would make us want to associate ourselves with an organization that's not even based in our own country? Not like I said, I'm just speaking hypothetically, because this is what people are going to ask.
Yeah, that's great. Ford, Dodge, and Chevrolet, they're great vehicles, but there's also a place for Porsche and Lamborghini too. Mm-hmm. And to answer your question, there's nothing else that fills that void. If there was something, hey, I'm all American, true to the bone, all American. If there was an American company that could do what this is offering to do, then I'd be on board with that. But there's not anything else out there. And when you look at who invented it, it's not a cotton farmer or a peanut farmer that invented this company. It's the most professional company, arm wrestling company on the planet that invented this. So why not use that system? If they're using this system over in Europe, where Europe is 10 times poorer than America, and they're having $150,000 winnings, why don't we bring that system to America, where we're 10 times richer? And what does that mean? 10 times 150,000, that's 1.5 million. If we're equal to what they're doing over there, our payouts will be 1.5 million.
Now, question for you: that 150,000, is that government subsidy? Is that sponsorship? Is that a private investor? Where does that money come from?
It's all from PAL, Zloty Tour is financed by the PAL. You know, you know several different ways PAL gets money. Yeah, they have their sponsors. They have no government assistance. Yeah, the $150,000 payouts is no government assistance. It's just company owned. It's hosted by a company who has that kind of payout from the various things that they make money off of in the arm wrestling world. Sponsors being one of them, apparel, you know, all their equipment line. That's another thing that I'd go back to is that's what we'd bring to America when we follow this example. They have their big vendetta shows are pay-per-view. You know, we don't have that here. WAL is doing it some, but we bring that here. You know, any big Zloty style or Zloty quality tournament that we have here, and the big vendetta matches that we would have have the same pay-per-view opportunities. And when this happens, this just opens a lot of media eyes, a lot of mainstream eyes, and opens the eyes of the sponsors to spend money on the sport. So it would basically.
Go ahead, you finish.
I was going to say it creates the sport here the way that it is in Ukraine, where everyone knows the sport. You don't walk up to someone on the street in Ukraine and say, "Hey, I'm an arm wrestler," and they say, "What is that? That's a thing?" That's what you get in America. You know, people find out I'm an arm wrestler. Oh, I didn't know that was a thing. Where do you do that at? You must have to travel somewhere way far off to be able to compete in a tournament. I'm like, nope. We have them in our backyard every freaking weekend, somewhere you can drive to. You know, nobody knows about it here. You go to Ukraine, everybody knows about arm wrestling. It's a huge sport. It's televised. It's on media channels all the time. It's a huge freaking sport over there. So that's what we're doing. We're taking their same concept there, bringing it to America, so we'll have those same opportunities here that they have there. Again, why a foreign company? Because if we were going to do it here, we would have already done it. We don't have anything like that here. They have it there. We're bringing that here. Again, there's a place here for Ferrari.
I think the big difference is, you know, with the, you know, Storm and I are WAO guys, you know, and, you know, obviously loyal to them. And I love the promotions that they put on. I think the big difference that I'm noticing is that URPA and PAL and Zloty kind of have a progression, meaning there are different levels that can kind of get you to where you want to go. I know WAL did have that at one point, and that's the thing that's a little bit lacking right now. I think guys that desperately want into the WAL don't necessarily know how to get there. I do see the concept for sure of URPA being able to be your pathway to get to that elite level. So it definitely makes sense to me. And back to your point about like what the differences are. I mean, just looking at your shirt right there tells me that there's plenty of sponsors. So, and obviously, you know, we've thrown some tournaments here in Pennsylvania and worked our tail off, and with no sponsorship at all. We're footing the bill for the total overhead. So would there be a scenario where the PAL or URPA would assist in the process of helping us garner sponsorship?
I don't think they have an actual way to help us get sponsorship here in America, because they don't have, they don't have any ties here, and that's
no boots on the ground, right? No boots on the ground. It would have to be us boots on the ground. But what I'm saying is, is there a concept for procuring sponsorship, or is there guidelines or something along that line?
I think the concept. I think this is what they did was to get their sponsors is they're legitimate over there. They're a professional sport. They have standards, just like any other sport in the world. They have standards, and they're using those standards, and they're creating these top level events like we see at the Zloty Tour, you know, and with the smoke and the lights and the DJ, and you got the music going. It's big hype, and people are paying to get into the venue. And I mean, they're paying big money to get in these venues to watch these tournaments. People that we don't have here. We have tournaments here. The only people that come to tournaments here are the people who's either competing or they're girlfriend or something, you know. There, you got people trying to get in the damn door to watch the show, and they're paying $50 a head to get in, and the ones that aren't doing that are watching it on pay-per-view. So they did that simply by having a top-notch event. You know, they opened a lot of people's eyes by having those top-notch events.
Now, say they come into the United States. Like, how long is it going to be before these tournaments are at that production level? Like, say they get in here, you know, next year.
We're going to have to start having those lottie quality events before that starts happening, and we're looking at starting that next year. Of course, we have to have, you know, some promoters on board to host events. So, and then we have to have athletes registered to pull in the events before they'll start really getting a lot of points racked up and then call them vendettas. When they start getting points racked up and start calling vendettas, and we have some good legitimate vendetta matches on the books, then we'll have a slotty style tournament. We'll host a big top-notch level event. We'll have these vendetta matches at that time. And again, we have that here. That will do here what they did there, just open a lot of people's eyes, and it becomes I hate to say circus. It's not a circus. It's nothing, you know, comical at all about it. But hell, you see what the circus does when they come to town.
Right. So, so with all that said, what, if any, correlation does ARPA and PAL have with IFA? Because I know we talked about that. So we're talking about amateur. IFA would be an amateur world championship, bragging rights. ARPA's a system. We define the system for the most part. And then PAL is the elite or the most elite level of a URPA style tournament. Is there any correlation or association between the IFA worlds and these two?
None whatsoever. No owner of the PAL has any seat in the IFA. Like I said, IFA was formed by Ukraine, Poland, and Sweden. It's governed by a committee. The president of that committee lives in Sweden. It's Anders Axklo. It's no correlation whatsoever. The only thing that you could say where they would tie anything together is that IFA chooses to use the ARPA point system for their world championship. What that means is when you go to Worlds, you have the opportunity to gain points for ARPA. You don't have to. If you're not a member of ARPA, that's fine. You don't have to be. But they use the ARPA software and point system.
Okay. So that would be a multiplier of 10 in the general class or the elite class?
No, it'll be in the general class. Like I said, the only elite class is the Zloty Tour. But it's not. It probably will not be a multiplier of 10, possibly a 5. The point, the concept of having multipliers is to attract pullers to your event, so that entices the promoter to up his game and have a higher level event, so he can have a higher multiplier attached to his event. Well, the Worlds already has its reason to come. So they're not going to attach a high multiplier to that one because the people are already going to it. That's the incentive to go to Worlds, is to go win a championship.
Right.
So it's not going to have that. But like I said, the only one that would have a multiplier of 10 would be a elite level anyway, and that's, as of right now, that's only the Zloty Tour.
All right. Starting to make sense. So with all that said, URPA coming into the United States, how soon do you plan on these tournaments really starting to become, more easy to find or travel to? What's the timeline look like?
I'm going to spend this year, that's what this year's for, is to register athletes and promoters. I will personally be at all of the qualifiers and at the Arnold's to register people for ARPA, whether it be a promoter or an athlete. To be registered as an athlete, it's $5. It costs it don't cost a promoter anything. It costs him $100 administration fee per tournament. The athlete to get registered is $5. When he pays his $5, he's entered into the database. He'll go onto the website and download his picture, and then he's got his own little profile out there in arm wrestling world. He'll have a certificate of professional arm wrestling emailed to him, and he can go on there anytime and look and see where he's ranked against other poolers worldwide and nationwide. Again, he'll have 2 different rankings, one world and one in the nation. So, yeah.
Now, do we know where all these IFA qualifiers are yet around the United States?
3 of them. One is on the 28th, February the 28th in Reno, and then we have another one March the 14th, I think it is, in Cottonwood, Alabama, and then another one in mid-April up in Louisville, Kentucky. And Denise is still working on the Northeast qualifier location.
Do we know a rough date of when that one will be taking place?
She's trying to get everything in by the end of April. So again, it's up to the venues. She tries to do high quality venues. She's looking at casinos. All the others, I believe, all of the others are at casinos. I know Alabama and Reno's at a casino. I'm not sure about Kentucky, but she likes to do casinos because they're good venues. They take care of us really well with rooms and whatnot. But looking at probably around the Connecticut area sometime by the end of April, hopefully.
Okay.
All right. So looking at the big picture for arm wrestling, what does ARPA and the new inception of IAF and the potentials with of partnering up with Igor and PAL, what does the 5-year, the 10-year plan look like down the road? What can United States arm wrestling look like?
All right. So when you register with ARPA, you start doing ARPA quality tournaments. That changes things as a promoter and a competitor. It ups the game of both. Again, when you can't host an ARPA event unless you go by their guidelines and standards. I'll use that scenario, that phrase right there 1,000 times within the next year because I use it with everybody I talk to. ARPA creates guidelines and standards just like every other sport in the professional sport in the world. Football don't use 10 different types of footballs. They use all the same type of football. To be a legitimate sport, you have to have standards and guidelines, and that's what ARPA demands. You have to use the same type of tables. You have to have the same quality of referees. The referees have dress codes. The competitors even have dress codes. So it's bringing the sport to a professional level. And the reason it's doing that is to open people's eyes and to be recognized as a legitimate sport. Oh, when was that? I think it was in, tell me if I'm wrong, was it 93 or 2003 when 3 men took the sport of mixed martial arts and created standards and guidelines and came up and invented the UFC.
It was in the 90s for sure.
I think it was 93. I knew it was one of the threes, either 3 or 03. So, mixed martial arts has been around for a long time. I don't know how long freaking time before we were all born, but it never became a legitimate sport until they put standards and guidelines on this sport and created that company. And that's what Mazarenko Productions and PAL have done over in Europe for arm wrestling. And they're offering it not only to us, but to any company who wants to take advantage of it. They're just offering us, they're telling us, hey, this is how we did it. If you want to do it, if you want to be as good as we are, then do it like that. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, people have stole the ideas of German car manufacturers for years, for decades, because they knew that Germans had a lead on everybody else. American car companies have used the Germans' concepts to make their cars better. Why can't we use a foreign concept to make our sport better here in the United States?
Right. Makes sense. Can't argue that. The MMA analogy is something we've heard before because there are some similarities to the sport for sure. And I do remember there was a time period there where when the UFC 1, 2, and 3 came out, it was looked at as a spectacle, and it didn't gather as much momentum early on as we're seeing now. But I mean, heck, there's Brazilian jiu-jitsu places and MMA training camps all throughout the country and all throughout all of our states. You can find them as well as you can find yourself basically any type of fitness gym. So and it took them a few years, but I mean, it got mainstream pretty quick. So is that something where you think, you really believe that that's something that's attainable?
I do. I believe there are enough athletes that want it. Of course, there's always going to be an underground side to arm wrestling, just like there is in MMA. You always have the amateur MMA fighters that are happy competing in those lower level events. We're always going to have that in arm wrestling. But we do have enough athletes that want that higher level, and that's who we're going to draw. ARPA is not for everyone. If you're a lower level puller, I'm not trying to dog you, but if you don't want something better for the sport, if you're happy going to the smaller tournaments where there's 100 entries and it's a one-day event, it's over in 5 hours, and you won first place, but you didn't really have any competition. If you're happy with that, that's fine. You're not going to be happy with ARPA because ARPA is going to be humongous with a ton of competition. But it doesn't take the entire arm wrestling population. If we have
You know, there you are. There you are. You dropped for a second.
You back?
You're dropping. You're glitching. It's that Mississippi Wi-Fi.
My phone is ringing. I'm sorry.
Okay. Hit the FU button.
It'll stop in a second, I hope. Okay. All right. Yeah, it doesn't take, it's not going to take the entire arm wrestling population to make this happen.
Right.
Everyone in Ukraine, all the arm wrestlers in Ukraine do not compete at the Zloty Tour, but the Zloty Tour offers that tournament to create a bunch of hype to make it the sport recognized in Ukraine. So when we do that here, if the United States has, 4,000 arm wrestlers, if we take 400 of them, just 10%, and we have a huge tournament with the 400 of the best arm wrestlers. Matter of fact, we don't want everybody. We don't want the ones that don't want to make it, to bring it to a higher level. We want the best. We want the people who want to have the higher level tournament. So we take the top 10% of the arm wrestlers in the nation. We give them the best tournament of the year with a ton of hype, vendetta matches, money on the line, media attention, TVs, pay-per-view. You give them that'll change the sport of arm wrestling in America just like it did overseas.
Well, I like that idea. And Shawn, I know we're starting to run low on time here. Is there anything else you want to touch on before we go ahead and wrap up?
Well, you asked me earlier the goals, like the 2-year, 5-year, 10-year goal or whatever. It's not going to take 10 years. We'll stop at 5 years. But the 2-year goal is to have the Zloty type, and within the next 2 years. This year is the inception phase. That's getting everybody on board. That's promoting it. There's already a few promoters already doing some ARPA events in the United States. We will have 3 per year in the South, just with Mississippi Arm Fighter. We're bringing more promoters on board right now, so they're getting signed up. Like I said, I'll be going to all the qualifiers and the Arnolds, getting people signed up there. I'll be at Worlds getting people signed up down there, promoting. That's how you grow a business. So I'll be doing that for ARPA. Within the next 2 years, the goal is to have that very first Zloty quality tournament in the United States, and it's probably not happened since the mid-90s when the Over the Top tournament was here. And so we do that here. We get some. We start getting people's eyes opened up. Then we start opening up the potential for sponsors. And as any promoter knows, sponsors is what makes the promotion top level. The more money you have to spend on your event, the more money you have to use for payouts, the better event you're going to have. The 5-year goal is to continue having that Zloty style tournament We gravitate to having multiple Zloty style tournaments per year, and then we have TV coverage. We have it covered on some major sports network, whether it be ESPN or HDTV. But we have it somewhere televised within the next 5 years, these major tournaments with the top level players in the sport. And that just gives all the athletes something to get excited about, whether they're top level or not. I guarantee you these guys that are happy pulling the lower level tournaments with the MMA or fighting for the MMA in the lower level tournaments, they're just as excited about the UFC fighters as the UFC fighters themselves. You know, it gives the whole sport, all the players, something to be excited about. So that's what we're doing. That's what I'm promoting. That's what I'm pushing. One other thing I'd like to push is boycott the USAF Nationals. The reason behind that is because they have so many banned athletes. USAF is Association of WAF. So the only people that can pull at the USAF Nationals, the select athletes that are not banned. By the time the Nationals comes around, majority of Americans will be banned for pulling that tournament. So how can you say you're having a national championship tournament if the majority of Americans can't even come to it? So we need that tournament out of the way so we can create a true national championship. And I've already talked to the key members of the other major organizations in America, and they're all on board. The only requirement is they need to stop the USAF Nationals because nobody wants to have two national championships. So everybody's on board. As soon as the USAF Nationals is gone, then we'll start another true national championship where everyone can compete, not just the select WAF arm wrestlers.
Well, that's probably a little controversial. We'll see how that goes over.
That could start a whole nother video.
Yeah, I feel like that might be a separate interview for a separate time.
Yeah, definitely. That'll go on for a while, I bet.
Storm, any last thoughts before we wrap it up?
Nope, good to wrap it up.
Hey, Shawn. So it was a major pleasure having you on, brother. It's always been my pleasure when I've got an opportunity to interact with you. Stand-up guy. I like your foresight and the ideas for the future. Can't wait to see how things unravel. Once again, thanks for coming on.
Hey, I appreciate y'all. Thank you for your time. I'll see y'all soon.
Yes, sir.